Hey YouTube, Longboys Post 1975, there's a question down there. I'm really not getting used to pointing down there. I prefer it when I'm up there, but never mind. Yeah. What was your sort of first experience of video games, or your sort of first exposure to video games? Now, by this, I don't necessarily mean the first machine, be it computer or console you owned, or the first, system in your house. It might be the first time you played an arcade game. It might be, the first time you played around a neighbour's house, or the first time, they had one set up in a shopping centre or a mall. Because, your first experience of video games isn't always going to be the fact that you got one for Christmas or your birthday, is it? And also, the other interesting thing about this question, it is inspired by something, but we'll get to that, is depending on where you live and how old you are, the answers are going to vary, vastly across the board. Now, the reason I'm asking this question is most people will probably know my video gaming history if they watch my channel on a regular basis. We're talking Pong Machine, Spectrum, Master System, Mega Drive, Super Famicom, so forth, etc., and so on, things like that. But my first experience or exposure to proper video games might surprise you. It's actually the Atari VCS. Completely and utterly forgot about this. It's funny because it's a question I've been meaning to ask my dad forever, but you just always forget to do so, which is, why did you buy us a Spectrum? What made you decide to buy us that particular system? We're talking in 1982. And the reason I remembered was, in order to get the Christmas tree out of the attic, a few weeks ago, we had to take a whole bunch of stuff down. It's proper rammed up there, mind. And a lot of it was actually boxes and boxes of tape games and a couple of boxes of Spectrums, because we got 3 in the attic. I got 2 rubber mats and a +3. And so I actually stopped and said, why did you get us a Spectrum? And he goes, don't you remember, in the house at the time when we were really, really young, we had, neighbours that used to look after us when both my mum and dad were working at the same time. And the funny thing is, because that's what you did back then, wasn't it, back in the day, if, they had to go out, then their kids would come over here and my parents would look after them. It was just a community thing. So we used to go around there. Now, this is where I got to get the timing right, because the VCS was released in '78 in the United Kingdom, and they moved away halfway through '81, which is 6 months or so before we got our Spectrum. But apparently we used to come back, so we were in like 4, 5 or something, and just going on about this absolutely amazing machine they had with big fat black joystick with 1 red button. I tell you what, do you remember those joysticks? You needed Popeye forearms to move those bad boys. Going about how amazing this thing was, and you could slap in cartridges and change the games, and the graphics were utterly fantastic. And my dad had seen it, because the night the guy bought it, before he gave it to his kids, invited my dad around and go, like, come and look at this amazing piece of tech, it's cutting edge. And my dad always remembered it being this massive box with a weird effect finish around the outside. And he said he came back and, we used to constantly go on about how amazing this thing was. And he thought, well, you know what, I'm going to buy him something, but I'm not. And it's funny, he said this to me, he goes, I wasn't going to invest in something that was just a games machine, I thought, no, you need something more than that. He goes, to me that was just that was a one-trick pony, so I thought I'd get you a computer because, it's educational, you could learn stuff, it could provide you a tool set that would benefit you at school, maybe, even benefit you later on. The irony here is we never did anything but play video games on it. And the other thing he said was, he goes, I wasn't going to buy some, foreign piece of stuff. I was going to go, support the UK industry. He goes, so that's why I got the Spectrum. I thought, let's support the British computer market, because people forget that in the early 80s, Britain was the biggest manufacturer of computers in the world, period. And he goes, so that's why I bought you a Spectrum. And I sat there and, like I said, I completely forgot. Now, I've got really hazy memories of sat next door playing this with their 3 kids. There was 2 girls and there was a guy, and it was funny because I can remember the dodgy smell of air freshener and the horrible, grotesque wallpaper that people had in the very late 70s and very early 80s. It was like caravan quality. It was absolutely terrible. But yeah, I can kind of remember it now, and it's technically my first true experience of video games, because I don't count sort of Game & Watch and stuff like that. That's not a video game to me. But my first true experience of video games is actually the Atari VCS, or the Atari 2600. So I'm curious as to, what's your first experience, your true first experience of video games? As I said, not necessarily the ones you owned in your house, but your true first experience of playing a game. I'd really like to know. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later.